We're filming the 5-year anniversary Q&A at 4 a.m. so I can bypass my performance persona and just give you the truth. I'm going to share as honestly and transparently as I can about my research process, my business goals, my spiritual incentives, and a variety of miscellaneous questions about my love life, my relationship with substances, and also what kind of music I like to listen to. This is a 5-year anniversary special. And I've tried to film it a few times, but it hasn't worked. I get too in my head, and I'm trying to do this perfect video and present everything perfectly. I just can't. I just cannot. There's so many questions in this video. Check out the timestamps down below. I'm going to try and do my absolute best to be as honest as I possibly can about things I don't get an opportunity to talk about very often on this channel. If you've been here for a few years, thank you. If you're new to my work, welcome, and thank you in advance for doing the deep work that we do over on this corner of the internet. I hope you find the answer to your question down below, and if I've linked this to you in the future because you asked me a question about my reading practices, then just go straight to that and you'll have your answer. Let's dive in, after having said thank you, with the very first question. How do you manage to retain all the information? I don't manage to retain all the information I've read in books. I've read over 700 psychology books, and I don't aim to remember what I've read because that is a stupid way of reading, in my personal opinion. You just can't do it. I don't aim for more than 10% of memorization when I read a book for the first time. And I think we're really shooting ourselves in the foot to adopt this teenage exam-passing mentality when it comes to reading material related to our own healing and our own personal development, which is why we need to go on to the second question, which actually explains my process in a lot more detail. This is someone who said, I'm curious about your approach to first and second reads of a book. For the first read, do you immerse yourself in the book and highlight key points? Yes. Or do you take notes immediately? No. Capturing any free associations that come to mind. How do you approach the second read? How do you dissect it differently? For people who've been around on my channel for a long time, you'll know that when I read a book, for example, The Primal Wound by John Furman and Ann Giller, one of the best books on transpersonal psychology as it relates to addiction and your personal growth, I will go through and I will pretty heavily highlight the book. And that's for me to remain engaged. If you're interested in what the two colors mean, what does the green mean, what does the orange mean? If I pick out another book from here, we're going to go with Our Inner Conflicts, another fantastic book from 1945, Karen Horney, who's a very underrated female psychologist. Why is this one green and yellow? What am I aiming at here? Do I have a secret system? I don't have any secret system. I choose 2 colors of highlighters to keep it fun for myself. I read a lot of my books while standing up. I'll just randomly change highlighters whenever I feel like it to make that sensory experience a bit more engaging, and I focus on immersion. I immerse myself in the atmosphere of the book when I'm reading the book for the first time, in the same way that if I was meeting Karen in a coffee shop and she had 4 hours of my attention and we were having a conversation, I'm not trying to remember all the facts and figures and perspectives that she's sharing with me. I'm there for her. I'm there for her energy. I'm there for her experience. I'm there to listen and engage. And when books start to become a living conversation, you end up in a position where you don't focus on percentages of memorization or retaining the information. You tap into the essence of the author, and then you return to the conversation the second time around to really get the most out of what they have to share with you in terms of the specifics. So once I've read a book for the first time, usually I like to read in about 4-hour stretches. On my prime reading time, I'll do like a 4-hour stretch, sometimes 5 hours, and then maybe in the evening I'll do a few more hours on a reading day, which is most days of the week. But this is a sample of how I've structured my entire research process over the last 5 years. Again, this is the 5-year anniversary video to the day. Autumn Equinox 2024, looking back to Autumn Equinox 2019 when I've read the first book, and now over 700 books later, 164 of them have been reread. I'll actually share some statistics that I wrote down last night because it's all very immediate. But this is what my charting looks like. You'll see from this example, which was December 21st, 2022 to spring 2023, I have my first reads over here and my second reads. You'll notice that there's a lot more first reads than there are second reads. In this 3-month cycle, there were 30, oh no, actually, that's different. Normally there's a lot more. So the cycle afterwards, the 3 months afterwards, there was 48 first reads and 10 second reads. But I guess for this particular cycle, I wanted to balance it perfectly, so I actually did 36 and 36, which made it at 72. But then over there, I don't know if this is coming up, they're just books. It doesn't matter, the volume doesn't matter. This is me trying to film it at 4 a.m, so I'm just honest with you. It doesn't matter how many books I've read. The whole process is me looking for the best books, which is my second read. My second read primarily is taking the best 20%. Roughly speaking, I need a massive amount of volume. I read pretty much every book from an author. For example, this John Furman and Ann Giller book. I've got 5 of their books over on this same shelf here to my left, and this is the best one on the topic, which I then second read. I've also second read, I think, 3 of their books. That's my process. You might be wondering, well, what is the second read? If you only remember 10% of the information on the first read, well, how much do you remember on the second read? Maybe 20%, maybe 25% if I'm lucky. And my second read process is very simple and exceptionally old-fashioned. I like to copy the words, word for word, on the laptop, like an old-school monk. I literally scribe out mechanically the best extracts from the book. So if I were to go over to my laptop and bring up my second read for The Primal Wound, I think we have roughly a 25 to 30 page document where I will type out word for word any of the highlights that came through. I'll capture some notes while I'm typing out the highlights. For example, this would make a good video on dissociation, or this connects to this idea from Karen Horney's idea in Our Inner Conflicts. I start making some connections between the books, but primarily I will first read a book. A book like this may take, I don't know, up to 10 hours to read the first time, and then the second read is when I go back to the book 3 months, 6 months, or up to 12 months later, and I sit down with it, and it's usually double the amount of time for the second read, which would be 20 hours. So in total, I spent 30 hours with this book, and then when I do my secret third read, which is when I teach a book, that's when I actually start to push closer towards the 40% retention or memory of the material, because I teach it and apply it either to a client or in one of these YouTube videos. That's my process in a nutshell. Read a book the first time, I immerse myself in the energy, I get to know the author like a real living conversation, and then I decide if I want to meet them again for a second date. 20% of the books I've read over the last 5 years have been worthy of a second date. I have just finished the second read process last night, and if you're interested in how many books I've second read and what the figures and statistics are, here they are. I'm going to put that up and I'm going to read it out. You can screenshot it, but it's second reads on the 21st of the 9th, 2024. I did my first second read of Meeting the Shadow. I think that was my first second read on the 20th of August, 2020. And now, 4 years, 1 month, and 1 day later, we have 164 of them read across 2,233 pages, and it's 884,732 words manually typed up on Google Docs at my laptop on my own, more or less every single week for the last 4 years to get to about 25% memorization of the material. And then when I teach the material, either with a student, with you here on YouTube, or in my private course, that's where it starts to go higher and higher. That's it. It might not sound too impressive, and I don't think it is that impressive, but I think it's realistic. I don't imagine that I will ever be able to maintain in my mind more than 50% of the material from The Primal Wound, even though it's one of my top 20 books in this library. I'm not aiming for that. What I am aiming for is immersion in the essence of the author, their energy, their perspective, their overall style of writing, their overall philosophy of healing or growth, self-actualization, self-integration, whatever the topic might be, jungian psychology, transpersonal psychology, some somatic therapy. That's what I do. And then, this is where I kind of wrap up the whole question. The comfort I feel in not memorizing the material is because I have a literal library around me. So if you said to me, you're the client in my session, and you say, Jordan, I've really been struggling with my repetition compulsion. I keep doing the same thing over and over again. Do you have a book that I wouldn't have heard of which covers this issue? I might go, we spoke about Karen Horney about a month and a half ago, and you really enjoyed that book. How about we pick up another one of her books, like Neurosis and Human Growth? And wait a minute, there's an idea in there. I think it's in chapter 6. Chapter 6, we were talking about this idea of where this comes from. Let me just check that for you. I pick the book out the shelf, I'm in the session, I've got the highlights, and then I go to yes, this is where it is. I have a rough approximation of which book the idea is in and which chapter it's in, and then I take 15 to 20 seconds like a real human being to go into my library, which is physically available, and bring out the idea in the session, because I don't try and store it in my mind. And I do that same process if I'm preparing for a YouTube video. I'll know which books, roughly speaking, have the ideas I want to talk about. I'll cross-reference in that way. And now that I have this collected second read archive, literally from last night, I have these 164 documents, over 880,000 words across 5 PDFs. I can try and figure out a way to compile them into one. And then you Control F, search the word repetition compulsion, search the word dissociation, search the word archetypes, search for spirituality, whatever word I want to search for. Hundreds of results. I did a test yesterday. I searched the word depression in just one of the PDFs, one of the 5 PDFs, because you have to break it up when it goes over 600 pages. And there were 120 results, which is cool. Like, it's really cool to have that ability to basically take all of this, get the top 20%, and then of the top 20% of the books, I type up somewhere between 10 to 20% of the book, word for word, maybe that's even a higher end, 5 to 15%, I don't know. That's my first read and second read process. This should answer pretty much any question about how I research. I hope it does anyway, because it's rambly, but it's honest. Immerse yourself in the material. Don't worry about memorizing. Don't worry about memorizing, just make the contact. It's not an exam, it's not a study, you're not 18 and trying to get to university or pass some kind of job test. You're learning for the joy of learning, or applying the information to your life to make a transformation that's meaningful. You shouldn't be in this old school student mentality where you're trying to cram it all in, because what happens when you try and memorize the book, you forget it after the test. There's no test in life in this way. Enjoy the process of building a library, build a bookshelf, build it in material reality, and refer back to the authors over many years. A book like The Primal Wound, I'm going to be rereading this, I'm going to be teaching this. I've got more videos to film on this book for years and years to come, hopefully decades. If I've done this research project well, this 120-year, roughly speaking, full spectrum psychology literature review, I know that this is one of the top 20 or 30 books on the transpersonal perspective around addiction, ego self-formation, and the different bands of the unconscious from a personal and collective level. That's how I do it. Let's move on to the next question. And I will take a sip of tea. I've actually got 2 choices, either tea or coconut water for this video. It's going to be a long night for me. Bring it up on the screen. Yes, I do have romantic goals in life, and do I ever see myself sharing a life with someone? Nice personal question to break up this very academically focused beginning to the Q&A. Of course, I love partnership and connection and romantic situations with women who are amazing, and yet at the same time, you might have noticed I don't talk about my dating life on the internet, and that's because I still haven't figured out in the low-level public figure Z-list celebrity status I might have, how to separate my public role from my private experience. And this is particularly difficult in my position as someone who does trauma healing, someone who does therapy around relationships to the inside, the outside, the ego, the self, the soul, but also, I'll put it this way. I don't want to be in a position where I'm dating somebody who then becomes an objectified extension of my business. And it's a slippery, slippery slope that I see with people on the internet who don't mean wrong, but all it takes is you look at a male relationship coach, they put up a reel where they're hugging their girlfriend, or they spin her around and give a kiss, and they put some text on the screen, and in that moment she has become a prop, she has become an object, you've taken away her soul, and she's become a teaching tool for the internet for strangers. And I don't like that. For me, as extreme as it might be, to even talk about your relationship on the internet beyond a superficial level, unless you're really called to that work, is to invite somebody into your bedroom to watch the act. And it's not just somebody. In my case, it's thousands and then tens of thousands and, God willing, hundreds of thousands of people. I say God willing at the time of recording. I think there's 2.5 million views across the channel. There's a lot of people. And if I start sharing stories and I get positive comments saying, hey, we really like this, share some more, it becomes a temptation to then further objectify my dating life. And I've seen these stories, unfortunately you may have seen these as well, where the beautiful conscious relationship, the great tantric teachers who are a power couple, they go their separate ways because of an explosive pressure where they're basically in this, Z-list celebrity relationship drama. I don't want that. I'm very happy to be open about my inner process, but there's two things I'm still really trying to understand in terms of how I teach, and that's my personal family trauma and family history. How do I talk about my parents in a way that's respectful towards them, but also honest? And how do I talk about my dating life in a way that's respectful and honest, but honestly, I kind of want to leave that for me. Because I'm not yet at the stage where I've got children. I'm happy to say that I haven't got children, but if I'm imagining myself 20 years into the future, how much of my little boy or little girl energy, the children that I have, how much of them goes onto the internet? Not their faces, maybe not their names, but how many stories? How much of my partner do I put on the internet? It's a big question for me to ask, and it feels strange for me to explore this in real time, but I'm just being honest with you. I haven't figured it out, and I don't see good enough examples of people sharing their relationships in similar positions to the position that I'm in, and it feels good for me. So for now, at least for the future, do I have any romantic goals in life? Of course I do. They're not my primary goal in life. I'm a man who really wants to read and teach and create something beautiful, and I'm very much mission driven, but I want a family and I want that connection as well. And I'm just not going to talk about very much of my previous romantic experiences, my current romantic experiences, or probably very much of my personal, private, romantic life on the internet anytime soon. I do with my clients, this is maybe the caveat to end the question. If a client asks me in a one-to-one conversation, hey Jordan, what's the situation with previous girlfriends, current girlfriends, future dating situations? I'll be honest with them. If they ask me in the session, I'll be honest with them because I know who I'm talking to. In this moment, I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to you and thousands of strangers, and you never know who might be listening. And unfortunately for me, I also need to consider things like safety, protection, and just keeping people I care about safe. It might not be an issue at this stage, but all it takes is one person out of 100,000 who feels attacked or affronted or projects something onto me to say, I know what I'm going to do to get at Jordan because he didn't reply to my comment, or he didn't something, someone's in their headspace, and God bless them. I know what that's like. I understand when that thought demon, that parasite gets on your mind, but I don't want them to have the ability to get at me by getting at someone I love. And this is also why I don't follow anyone over on Instagram. I had these moments, I think at the start of the year, where I followed around 30 people, my closest friends, former clients, and I realized that the energetics around anyone basically being able to get access to my closest group of people and then turn that around on me potentially was something that I didn't want to risk. Maybe that's my paranoid side coming through, but as a survivor or someone who's come through childhood trauma, which I'm going to get into later in this video, safety, protection, and privacy is what my inner child needs to thrive in a very high pressure public role. So you might be hearing about my dating life 5 to 10 years in the future, but don't expect to hear about what I'm doing behind closed doors anytime soon, because that's my life and you don't get access to it. And I want to be an example of that being okay, especially in this culture where we should share everything. You probably get a feel for, based on how I talk about relationships, how I talk about the masculine and the feminine, that I've got a pretty successful history of having good, stable relationships with women who I love. I wouldn't be able to talk about these topics in a way if I didn't have some success, some nourishment, some health there. Sure, I've made mistakes, everyone does. But you can get a feel for what I'm trying to teach without necessarily getting that extra foot in the door, and I hope that helps. Again, I don't know if this is the right way of going about things, but I hope that's answered the question. Next question coming up. Congratulations, Jordan. I'm following your path. Wonderful. I'm following the teachers, so we're all following someone else. I will only be reading books from your library. For me, I have been wanting to ask if you are a vegan. I know you mentioned about not eating dairy, but I wasn't sure. I want to change my life to 180 degrees. Great question. I'm not a vegan currently. 5 or 6 years ago, I went vegan for about 6 months when I had an ethical awakening for the first time, as you do if you've been on the vegan or vegetarian pathway. You suddenly discover that factory farming is not good for the soul. You watch the videos, you look at the ethical arguments, and it landed in my heart as wrong. I didn't like what I was seeing, and also at the same time, when I went vegan purely, about 6 years ago, let's say, for the 6 month period, I was working on farms in Europe. And I remember the moment when I went vegan. I was on a beautiful biodynamic farm in Germany, and there were cows, and there were goats, and there were donkeys, and there were horses, and there were chickens, and everything you could imagine. Beautiful permaculture, highest quality community, couple hundred members. And I spent 4 months there in total. Part of my time was working at the dairy, and I went into the shifts. The first time I was there on year one, and then a year later I went there again for 2 more months. And this second time round, something had changed in my consciousness, where I realized that the separation of the mother cows and then the new baby calves who were over there in a pen, still very nice pen, still, they're all fed great quality food, but there was something about the separation from the baby calf to the mother cow, and me going out with my little bucket of water with a plastic teat on the end to then give it to this cow, and this cow's like really thirsty for attention and coming at you and really trying to wrestle the bucket off you, that I felt the wrongness of that. I didn't like the immorality of the children being taken away from the mothers, and things started to shift from that moment. I didn't see it the first time round, but then I did, and then I really felt it, and I felt that pain, and that started the pathway of becoming vegan. And then I was vegan for 6 months, and during this time period, I was also doing a variety of fasting experiences. I was water fasting for several days at a time. I'd already been doing that for a few years. I was clearing out my gut biome, clearing out a variety of things that were going on with my diet. And eventually, after about 4 months, I started getting dreams while I was fasting of eating fish. And then I checked in with my soul, checked in with my body, did some meditations. Do I really want to do this? My ethical feeling of, I don't want to consume animal life. And yet, something was coming up. And then I waited another month, didn't change my diet. Same thing again when I did a fast. Fish came back in. I really wanted to resist it, but I'm a pretty active guy. I enjoy training. I was doing manual labor. I didn't have access to the dietary needs seemingly that I needed. And it kept coming back. And then on that 6th month, I again did a fast, one fast per month at this period. Came back in very strongly. And at that stage, I'd gotten a good feel for the voice or the feeling of my soul. And I accepted that at least for this next month, I'll do an experiment of seeing what happens to my body if I just reintroduce fish. I'd cut out meat, I'd cut out dairy, I'd cut out eggs, let's just reintroduce fish. And I remember eating a piece of salmon and crying the moment I ate it. That was my 6-month experiment of veganism, and then I continued eating just fish, no dairy, no meat, no eggs, for about 2.5 to 3 years, and then the same energy came back up. This was by the time that I was building the library. I was training down at the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I was reading lots of books. I needed a lot of brain power. And suddenly I started dreaming about eggs, which sounds silly, but I was dreaming about eggs. I remember, I think it was a Christmas period. I was doing one of my Christmas fasts, because I fast for my Christmases and birthdays. I enjoy that experience of going inwards. And I had a very particular dream about opening up a golden egg and bathing in the yolk of the golden egg, basically. And it could have been symbolic on many levels, but I knew it was quite literal of, I just wanted a bit of variety in my animal proteins. And this brings me to the conclusion, which is, I'm not vegan. I haven't eaten red meat or chicken in 6 years, I guess, 6 years. I haven't consumed dairy. I think the dairy industry is particularly evil. I do have ethics, which make me not want to consume animal products at this stage. I can see cases for organic and grass-fed. I can see that. But for me personally, because I try and be intentional with my eating, I consume as much as my body needs to be the man that I need to be on a week-by-week basis, and this means I'll have fish and eggs of the highest quality that I can. I'll pray over the food and thank the life that I'm consuming. I invite it into my being, and I try and transform that energy into something which is better. It's almost confronting the shadow of veganism. And if you've noticed this in yourself, the shadow of veganism, where human life is at the very least on par with animal life, but some of the rhetoric can also put human life a bit below the animal kingdom, as if we aren't blessed with higher consciousness. You go into the consciousness studies, and there is a difference in the consciousness of a chicken, consciousness of a cow, consciousness of a pig, and of course, the consciousness and soulful energy of a human. We can work along the great chain of being, and all that I think that we need to do, at least from my perspective, my lived experience, having explored this pathway of veganism and vegetarianism, is to be conscious and intentional with the animal life that we consume, and of course intentional with the wider resources from the world which we also consume, often, unfortunately, a bit too unconsciously. So right now I'm not a vegan. I consume fish and eggs. I enjoy how that makes me feel. I've been able to gain weight. I've been able to train at the gym, and by being able to gain weight, gain size, I'm 85 kilograms, 6 foot tall. About this time period when I went vegan, I was probably like 76 kilograms. I've been able to bulk out again. I've been able to be strong, and being strong, being healthy, being fit, being active as a man in my particular lifestyle allows me to then show up with confidence for my clients, for you on YouTube, and to have the energy and resources I need at this stage in life to be able to read my books. So that's what I do. If in the future I get that message, it's time to eat red meat, or maybe it's time to eat dairy. I don't think dairy will come back in my diet. I've learned a lot about dairy, but it's time to eat a grass-fed steak from Farmer Fred down the road. I'm open to it if I get that message from within, but I haven't gotten that message yet, and that's probably as far as I can go on that theme. Next question coming up. Congrats and thank you. Your content has been tremendously helpful on my healing journey. How to make authentic content on social media. You film at 4 a.m. to get past your persona. Can you share the process of how you make your videos? Sure. Nice sip of organic tea with organic sugar and organic rice milk, because there's no dairy in this home. I do recommend getting as much organic food as you can, even your tea bags, your coffee, your sugar, and just go for the highest possible quality. That was the previous question. Let's go back to this one. How do I make authentic content on social media? Your content is a symptom of your character. It is the flower that blooms from the root of your being. If you are creating and you're teaching, and you're someone like me who's doing psychology, healing, self-actualization, something like this, you are the message. You won't be able to hear what I say if who I am speaks far louder than any single word, any great curated phrase, and I have really tried to live by this principle of become the man who shares the message rather than trying to craft a message which covers up the man that I'm not and plays some kind of inauthentic, half-fragmented, all over the place, superficial game of attention span optimization. I hate it. I fundamentally hate it. I've done a variety of experiments of learning how to do shorts. I did a TikTok experiment where I was posting 3 times per day. I hated it. Hate it. Doesn't sit with me. It feels too manufactured. Even at the start of these YouTube videos, I do a bit of the, here's the first 30 seconds, here's a hook, here's me holding up the book. You've seen this, like, today's video, we're doing this, and here's this, here I am confirming the thumbnail. That's for people just to get calibrated into my video from the homepage, and then I lower it down, but you've seen my videos before, and you'll see in this video, I haven't edited this. I put the comments up, but it's one take. Maybe that's my number one secret. I do one take videos because I'm interested in being a teacher who uses YouTube rather than a YouTuber who happens to be teaching. I'm authentic in my content because I'm authentic in my character, at least to 95% degree, and the 5% little bits where I'm a bit inauthentic or I'm doing some kind of social media performance or some kind of theatrical thing to optimize attention and encourage people to watch for longer, that's the smaller dose, and I try and minimize that as much as I possibly can. But for me, the big thing has been choosing the right platform and the right material to teach. I focus on books because I think books are worth more than the material which happens to be trending right now. I don't look at the theme that happens to be going up. For example, I haven't made videos on narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic relationships. I don't make videos on starseeds and empaths, and to an extent, highly sensitive person. I made 2 videos on that topic. One of them went really well, and I learned from that video going up, that I can talk about that topic. To some degree, I relate to the highly sensitive person topic, but the amount of people that came in who over-identified with that topic and they weren't really suited to my material overall, they didn't land because I was slightly off on my authenticity. I was making that video because I knew that that was a topic that was popular. I made this highly sensitive person topic. It's a key term, it's a search term, and it did well. It got over 200,000 views. It brought in, I think, 6,000, 7,000 new subscribers, and where were those subscribers 6 months later? Nowhere to be seen. Maybe some of them there, and if you found me from that video back in the end of 2022, I'm glad that I found you in particular, but most people just come in and they go. So what I've tried to do with my entire YouTube journey is I am the man that I want to be, and I present without filter to as much degree as I possibly can on topics I genuinely care about. Which means that I need to know the topic inside out, which is why I second read the books, and it's why when I'm sharing personal stories, it's quite easy because I've literally lived the topic. I try and avoid a lot of the traps of being overly, what's the word? Of just being fake. I try and avoid the trap of being fake on the internet by not relying on the ability to edit my own videos and cut out the dead time. Even just then, that wasn't an intentional moment. I genuinely needed to find the word. You saw every second of that silence. That's my theme on the internet, is I just turn on the camera and I speak. Yes, I've made an effort to make this set look nice. I've got a nice studio light, I've got a pretty expensive camera, I've got a microphone that's boomed out the shot. This is all periphery. I'm here as the man that I am, and I try and minimize the friction between the version of me that you get and the version of me that you get in a client session. My whole strategy for YouTube, in a way, is just to be me in conversation in the way that it would feel if we were actually having a conversation, allowing the difficulties of that monologue to be set to one side, because it is a monologue conversation. It is a parasocial relationship. I understand that. That's what I do. Hopefully this answers the question. If you're struggling with making content and teaching and showing up online, just pause and ask yourself, in what ways are you being inauthentic? And then focus on the authenticity of the content. Get your character straight. Line up your intentions in a way that is righteous and moral and ethical based on your values, and you won't get the stage fright. You won't show up with concerns about if you did things correctly or incorrectly, or if you did the right words or the wrong words. You were you. And that's what mattered, and that's what I try and focus on with this YouTube channel. That's what I try and do with my digital persona overall. Try and minimize that friction. I don't want the persona to be out here. I don't want it to be here. I want it to be a bit of a layer, just a bit of a layer. And that persona allows me to hide certain aspects of my life intentionally, like my romantic life. I hide it a little bit behind a persona, just a little bit. But you can still see my real face beneath. It's a translucent mask. It's a glass mask, and my real expression is actually here. And the proof is in the pudding that I'm filming this at this moment, 4:30 in the morning, to try and bypass the persona, because I knew it was getting in the way on the first 3 times that I tried to make this massive Q&A video. I really do try and practice what I preach. Just make sure that you are what you're preaching, and it becomes much, much easier. Next question. What's your weekly and daily routine like? How much time do you spend on work, taking care of yourself, reading, and other hobbies? How do you take care of yourself on different dimensions, like the physical, emotional, and spiritual? What takes the most effort, time, and energy? Fantastic question. For the last 5 years, my weekly and daily routine has been more or less reading books, rereading books, teaching, working with clients. It's been basically the same week on repeat. I stopped traveling in 2019, or I hadn't been abroad since 2019, and it's only this year in May that I went abroad for the first time. I had many invitations to go and do trips and do workshops and meet up with former clients, and I said no to every single one of them. I said no to every single podcast invitation I've gotten from some incredible people. We've had private conversations, but I've said no, not yet, not for me. I just live the same routine on repeat, which is I want to spend as much time as I possibly can, healthy, happy, and focused on topics I care about, and that is the reading and the teaching primarily. And if you want the actual split of my weekly and daily routine, I suppose a typical day, depending on the day of the week, I split my week in half. At the time of recording, I do offline days Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from all Instagram, and now for 3 weeks in a row, all YouTube, no video media at all. I'm healing that active screen addiction. On Thursday, I go back online for my clients on Telegram, and I can then watch YouTube videos again if I want to. And then I phase into Instagram and responding to comments on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So my week has this flow of complete introversion, staying away and doing the deep work, really going where I want to go with my mind and my energy. I then open up to the people who are most important, which is my paid clients, because they get my full focus. Even though the sessions Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm available for every single client for that 4-month journey from Thursday to Sunday every single week. If our session's on Saturday, we can talk on Thursday, we can talk on Friday and Sunday, and the session on Saturday. That's how I work. It's fully immersive. But for me to be able to create that kind of container, that kind of focus on a consistent 4-month basis with a handful of people ongoing all the time, with a couple moments per year where I take a break, my birthday and Christmas, really they're the only times I take a week off. I need to go offline. So I go offline and just withdraw from the world, and I love it so much. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I basically read all day. I wake up whenever I want to wake up. I don't do anything before 12 o'clock. This is how people do these questions, isn't it? They do the weekly and daily routine, and yeah, this is my daily routine. I've just realized that the basic level response is what time I wake up and what do I do with my day. It varies. I don't ever do a client session before 12 o'clock. Sometimes I'll be sleeping at 2 a.m. Sometimes when I'm in a really deep second read cycle, I'll be going to bed at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. I like staying up late. And then I sleep for roughly 8.5 to 9 hours, depending on when that might be. I wake up, normally will read if it's a reading day for like 4 hours in the porch, or if it's an online day, I'll work with clients, respond to messages, then read. I go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. When I go to the gym, I go at closing time. I go when it's empty. I go roughly around 8:30-ish in the evening, and I get the space more or less to myself because I'm very, very, very blessed to have a very cool independent gym nearby, which I love training in. It's very aesthetic. If you've seen over my Instagram, I like sharing the things I'm doing. I do all kinds of calisthenics and pull-up focus things, muscle-ups. I'm currently working on the handstand push-up. That's what I do in the evenings. And then I come back and work again. My messy response to this daily and weekly routine thing is I sleep for 9 hours. I wake up, depending on if it's online or offline. I read books or I respond to clients. I just do the same thing. I just do the same thing pretty much every day for like 5 years, and I enjoy training in the evening, and I enjoy working with the people on these 4-month journeys, and it changes based on how many clients at once, what their problems are. Some people are way more cerebral, some people are more heavy and it's more trauma, it's more dark energy. My routine changes a bit depending on my self-care needs, but primarily, I do the same day on repeat, and I do have a social life. I think that's a question actually that's coming up. It might be the next question. Yes, it is. Fantastic. I remember the preparation. As an introvert, how much time do you spend on a social life, and what are those relationships like? Can you talk more about your social life? Or maybe you're not introverted. It's an assumption because you read a lot. It's not a bad assumption. I'm pretty heavily introverted. I really, really, really enjoy not having to talk to people for multiple days in a row. And then I enjoy far more deep one-to-one conversations with my clients. I do 2-hour sessions because I think that a good conversation needs at least 2 hours. And I likewise enjoy doing one-take videos like this because we're 37 minutes into a one-sided conversation. I'm pretty introverted. Social life, I have close male friends, close female friends. I call probably on average 3 or 4 times per month. I'll have a 2.5 to 4 hour call with a friend. I'll go and do things occasionally in person with people that I'm close to. Yeah, I think realistically, I spend more quality deep time with my friends than most people do, but I spend significantly less time at the superficial office culture, party environment conversations than most people do or have to do or whatever it might be. I just don't like those scenes, so I don't spend time in those scenes. That's my social life. Pretty healthy. I have great group of friends, great group connections, people I've known for many years, new friends that I'm always making. I make a couple new friends per year with what I'm doing, other coaches, other teachers, other creative individuals. I'm pretty blessed and I feel pretty fortunate about my social life, but I am indeed fundamentally still a pretty introverted man. And I love that because a good book is the best conversation of all. Next question. What are your spiritual practices, and do you believe charity is an essential element in well-being and human thriving? At this stage, I pray over my food every day. I pray throughout the week. I'm non-denominational. I wear a cross around my neck. I draw inspiration from Christianity, but I'm very much interested in reading. This shelf to my left is probably like 30 Christian books. Got some more books down here. I'm going to read the Church Fathers. I recently finished reading Catechism of the Catholic Church. I'm interested in the tradition and the ideas and the inner experience of the Christian tradition. I'm also a little bit too curious in other traditions around the world to then narrow in on any one in particular. But the main idea, I think, that answers this question of what's my spiritual practice. I work and I serve. That's my main practice. This whole channel for me is self-actualization via service. I try and help. I really do believe in that deep Christian idea of faith without works is not true faith, and it's not a truly spiritual life. You need to do good in the world. And I like doing good in the world, at least as far as I can see. I like sharing materials that make a difference in people's lives. I like the feeling, and this is maybe where I get more extreme. I'll go more extreme. You're this far into a Q&A series episode thing. I feel a very tangible sense of robbing you as an individual and robbing other people of the potential gifts that I could give them if I waste my time on my offline days and I don't read, I don't create material, I don't teach, I don't think. I fetter and frivol it away one way or another. I feel the weight of that. My spiritual practice, if I truly think about my interconnectedness with all the people in the world, or at least the people who choose to pay attention to me over here, I take it very seriously. I try not to waste your time. This is a particularly long video, but I try and be concise. I try not to waste the minutes. YouTube tells me, analytically speaking, that at this point of recording, I think from last week, 25 years of human consciousness has been consumed by my material. There's a certain number of hours per day being consumed, but it adds up to 25 years in 2.5 years of me creating content, and I feel the weight of that. I feel the responsibility of not doing you dirty and not wasting your time. I don't care what you be doing with the time, otherwise who else you'd be watching. I try not to take it for granted. That's my main spiritual practice, and maybe some would say that that's an act of charity, my free YouTube videos. I don't know, I don't tie into the idea of charity because my life is going to be a life of service, God willing, into my 90s and beyond, and I don't donate to charities, I don't do charitable work, but I've left 12,000 comments on my own channel in the last 2.5 years, responding to people, encouraging conversations, giving free books. If that's charity, then that's charity, but also this is my business, and of course I have deeper offerings, paid offerings that sustain my lifestyle. I try and weave it all together. I don't see a separation between the two. I think a truly intentional life, a truly spiritually vitalized life, blurs the lines at the fringes. Hope that answers the question. Next question. What is my personal story behind this dedication for psychology? Here we are, 42 minutes deep into the video, and it's time for me to tell my story. In a nutshell, I became suicidally depressed about age 10. I spent 12 years in that state until I realized that my success at university, my success with my body, my success with women, my success wasn't enough to cure my deep, deep sadness. I had a difficult childhood to some degree. Fundamentally speaking, I just didn't bond with either of my parents. They're fantastic individuals in their own right. They tried their very best. It just wasn't for me. It didn't work out. I'll share more about my family story in the future. I haven't quite figured out how to talk about other people in a way that isn't gossip, that isn't the energetics of maliciousness or shadow things like this. So let's just say, in a nutshell, both my parents didn't quite bond, and the energies weren't quite so nice for me to exist inside. Didn't feel so safe in my family home, and that became a collapsed sensation around the age of 10. Got very, very, very dark, very sad, had a variety of existential issues, and I lived in that for about 12 years. And then I realized that my history degree didn't give me the answers. It gave me great grades, and I had a great prospect of what I can do, but maybe I could use my historical research skills for something which is more related to well-being, actual human well-being. So very easy transition into psychology. Around age 18, I started to do my spiritual development. Age 16, 2 years earlier, I got into training and personal fitness, which is maybe psychological to some degree, and the psychology around sports psychology, and then spiritual psychology. But my true dedication to psychology began after I finished university at 21, and then I started reading while I was traveling for 2 years. I took a few basic entry-level books, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts, but then eventually I got to the point where podcasts after 90 minutes only go so deep, and I got frustrated at the lack of depth. I started to think, maybe there's better ideas in the past, just like my history degree taught me. The historical timeline isn't a series of facts and figures spread across 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years waiting to be discovered. There's revisionist history, there's different perspectives on history, and surely the same must apply for psychology. Just because the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual says in 1980 that depression is this cluster of symptoms, that's what it needs to be. trace back the idea. And then I just kept tracing and kept tracing and kept tracing. Initially, of course, to heal myself, but then after the first few years of doing this, I was beyond the threshold to then respond to the constant, more or less, every single week, handful of messages of, hey, Jordan, here's a question, hey, Jordan, here's a question. I thought, maybe I should charge a bit of money for this, and I started working with clients. So that's my personal story. I was very unwell for 12 years. I had a horrific adolescence in terms of my inner experience. It was okay enough on the outside. There's various issues I've spoken about on this channel, but it was stable enough. If you're familiar with the ACEs scores of 1 to 10, and if you've got 10, you're incredibly traumatized. If you're 1 or 0, you're not very traumatized. You can look at ACEs, A-C-E. ACE is too high. It's a little questionnaire you can do to see just how bad your childhood was. I score a 6, and it probably is a 7, but it's not quite a 7, but a 6 or a 7. That's my history. And that meant I need to heal myself. And by God's grace, I think I've gone pretty far along that pathway, and then I get to share it with other people. Fun bit of triviality to break things up. I'm curious about what kind of music you listen to. What's my favorite genre, artists, and songs? I really like metal. I really like metal and rock. I listen to a lot of Parkway Drive right now, Trivium, Bullet for My Valentine, very like 2000s metalcore. I have also been enjoying a lot of modern country music, and I also listen to a variety of softer, more ambient kind of Nordic folk, or sometimes Gregorian chants, or sometimes classical music, depending on the mood. I'd say my 3 major motifs are metalcore in particular. Again, I really like Parkway Drive. Sometimes I enjoy Linkin Park, Papa Roach, those kind of, old school metalcore, pop punk kind of bands. I enjoy country music quite a lot these days. I'm really enjoying Chris Stapleton, enjoying Zach Bryan, those kinds of guys. And then I enjoy a bit of holiness with the Gregorian chants or uplifting classical music, and occasionally I will go into things like more gothic, alternative indie music, or I'll listen to pop on occasion. Occasionally I'll listen to someone like Dua Lipa or Taylor Swift, just if I want a bit of a sugary uplift and tap into that, but primarily the other things, those are my genres and songs. It truly depends on the mood. Can you please talk more about your relationship to psychedelics? Why and how you've arrived to the stance you have for yourself personally as opposed to clients, etc. Fantastic question. I've been sober at the time of recording for 5.5 years. No drink, no drugs, no cigarettes. I don't do it. I've experimented in the past. In my late teens, early 20s, I experimented with a few different psychedelic substances a couple of times, and I very famously, I think the Timothy Leary quote is, when you get the message, hang up the phone. I got the message pretty quickly that this is an external catalyst for something which is an inner experience, and that actually took me into fasting as my psychedelic of choice. Not a literal psychedelic, but I did those 25, 30, 35 fasts where you don't eat for multiple days, and just see what happens when you meditate in that kind of consciousness. You don't need a tab or a shroom to get very much further than that. It really, really goes much deeper than people let on. And I think when people start doing fasting, for me personally, with those first 5, you might not get very far. In the same way, your first year of meditation, you might not get very far. But when you go deeper into the practice, you can learn a lot. And then when fasting subsided, I was several years deep into the sobriety. I start getting more mystical experiences, my daydreams and my active imaginations. It just kept going. I feel like I'm pretty psychoactively tapped in, and I am fundamentally just biased towards the question of how long can I do this for? How much further will this go? What will I discover by being the sober psychonaut? And I think it's pretty cool, honestly. So that's me. That's what I enjoy. I know the studies. I see what's being done with MAPS. I see MDMA assisted therapy. I see people using ketamine. I see people tripping or microdosing. That's fantastic. It's not my thing. It's not what I'm here to teach. It doesn't align with my life. It wasn't my path of revelation. My revelation's been through sobriety, been through cutting away, been through intentional asceticism, and also, practically speaking, because my personal history of depression has a significant aspect of dissociation and depersonalization, not feeling real, feeling like you're a floating entity somewhere around here, not quite in reality. I don't need more substances that dissolve my ego. I need a stronger ego. I need to be grounded on the earth. I need to have a sense of I am Jordan Thornton and this is my role in the world, because those collective unconscious realms have very much been pulling at me for decades. I don't need more of that. I need a bit less of that. I need some more containment. And then if I want to open the door, it's right there. Maybe that's God's gift or God's curse. I don't know, somewhere in between, but that's my actual bio-psychological makeup. So I just don't feel like it's right for me to be going down the path of more substances. And that means that when I'm working with clients, one of my non-negotiables is we're not going to be doing psychedelic substances, with the exception of very rare, very specific circumstances where, of course, I'm not the patriarch or father figure who's going to say, you've been a good boy or a bad girl or whatever it might be. I talk with a person based on very unique circumstances, but as a general rule, I'm not the guy you come to if you want to be microdosing or doing drugs. You go to a different teacher for me to provide a high-quality teaching experience. I need to be authentic, and my authentic values and morals are we don't do those kinds of things in my space, although I can see the great benefit for certain types of people in certain conditions, under certain very safe conditions especially, just not my thing. Someone says here, how do I go about setting up my coaching services? Did you take or study specific coursework to put it all together? Did you start stepping into it and evolve it on your own as you went along? What did it look like, and how did you learn how to best meet the needs of your clients? As we are all own our unique selves, this is a fantastic question. This deserves hours and hours of conversation. In a nutshell, how did I start coaching? I've read a lot of books, probably 150. I healed myself personally beyond the 80% threshold. People kept seeing my things on Instagram. I was doing creative writing and travel stuff back then, asking questions about healing, and eventually I said, as I mentioned earlier, I could probably charge for this, but I didn't want to go straight in with that, so I had a friend who potentially was interested in coaching. I did 3 free sessions of 3 hours per session with this person, and then said, hey, was that useful? How'd you find that? If you want, I'd be open to receiving some money. And I think they sent me the equivalent of about £20 per hour. That was my first coaching client, a friend who wanted some in-depth coaching experience. I did a good enough job, got a bit of money, and then we did a few more sessions, and I think I got paid maybe £25 an hour. And I then put together an offer. I think my first coaching offer was something like, late at night, it was something like 10 3-hour sessions over the course of a month for £500 at the very start of my coaching, because I wanted to learn. I knew that I didn't necessarily have all the skills as a great coach, but I took on a few clients at that price point, studied books like how to be a therapist, how to be a coach, how to be supportive. I looked at all the clinical, therapeutic, and coaching material, and I kept learning. And then crucially, how did I grow my coaching practice? And if you look down at the pinned comment, you can see what my current coaching offer is. It's definitely not 10 3-hour sessions for £500. I'm currently charging, at the time of recording, £7,400 to a very small number of clients for an incredibly immersive and unique 4-month container. How do I go from more broad, let's give all the time and really low rate, to then very, very specific? I refine my skills and I raise my prices. That's it. That's the entire journey over the 4 years in between. I had an internal rule where every 5 clients, no matter how I felt, I would raise the price at least 10%, often 15% or 20%. I knew that I'd be deserving of at least £50 per hour. I knew I'd be deserving of at least £100 per hour. But I also knew ahead of time that once I get over that £100 an hour range, because I didn't come from money, don't have family money, I'd get some internal resistance about, I'm not really worth that, am I? I'm not really worth going above that. So I set that rule before I even started coaching. I don't care. Once you've signed 5 clients at the rough £100 an hour rate, you're going to charge 110, 120, 130, whatever it might be. And I just continued that until roughly this time last year. I reached the rate that I'm currently at with my mentorship. It's not precisely hour by hour because there's 12 2-hour formal sessions, but there's also 4 days per week of unlimited messenger contact. So I don't honestly know how much time I give to people. I very much run my sessions beyond the time required. If you've been one of my clients, we've never had a 2-hour session. It's always 2 hours 10, 2 hours 20, often 2 hours 30. I'm interested in the 4-month experience. That's what I do. I learned skills, I raised prices, I got better, and just kept doing that. I didn't get a certification. I don't believe in those things. I don't believe that you can go do a weekend certification or a 1-week certification and become an incredible coach. you need to be that man, you need to be that woman, you need to be the person who has the energy and has the teaching and has the experience so that it's authentic. There's no game, there's just being the thing and then having the skills. So that's what I've done. Hopefully this answers the question. I just gradually, incrementally improved my business, which I think takes us on to the next question of what's my business roadmap and goals. This is a big topic. Business roadmap and goals. When I started, my first goal was I need to be able to make enough money from my one-to-one services to be able to do more and more free or low price work. And that's what I've been following. I knew from the very beginning, I do not want to be caught in the starving artist hellhole of not being able to justify doing 20 hours of YouTube per week because it's free teaching, or not being able to give extra time in my comment section because I need clients and the bills aren't there to be paid. I focused on the cash flow from the beginning. High quality service, tied to the cash flow, better and better and better. And then I reached the point where I had the cash flow. I then made the shadow work library, which is 10% of my one-to-one rate. I've ratioed it, so it's 7,400 for my mentorship with up to 20 people per year. A very small band of people. I go very in-depth with them. I love these clients. Fantastic work. That's only 20 people per year. I don't work with more than 8 clients at once. Usually my ideal is about 5 or 6 people per month, like active per month. And then it continues. So my business roadmap is keep a small group of people where I can remember their auntie's name and their first dog's name, and I can remember all the varieties of patterns from their personal unconscious and then their future. I like doing that. I like being really tapped into their experience so I can give them an accelerated and truly unique experience. I'm going to continue that for as long as I possibly can. Handful of people per year, God willing, into my late life. I'm also going to build out the lower accessible price points, which means the 10% cut, so 7,400 on the mentorship. Shadow Work Library is £750 at the time of recording. You can find that if you want to join me for my truly high quality course material. And then I've got 2 options to flesh out in between. I've got my school, which is what I'm working on, which is a true full spectrum 104 book curriculum. The summary of this library experience is going to be about 7 years in the making. It's like the Shadow Work Library, but 70% more, 330 videos, 30 modules, private community, active lessons, all that stuff. That's going to be in the middle ground. So top mentorship, private community, online course, and then I start building out the cheaper options. And of course, fundamentally below all of this business roadmap, I gram myself in as much free material as I possibly can per week. And that's the YouTube videos, that's the stories I share over on Instagram, that's engaging in comments and discussions. Build out the free foundation, very free, very expensive, build out the space in between, and then my business roadmap is enjoy this and do this for as long as I possibly can. Yes, I'll write some books in the future, yes, I'll make more videos, but fundamentally, it's going to be the same thing. Whether I'm speaking to you on camera, I'm speaking to a stage with 500, 1,000 people, I'm speaking on a podcast, or I'm speaking in a book, it's me and my thoughts and my energy, my perspectives, my information, expressing in one way or another. And then likewise, receiving from the books, from the clients, from the feedback, and just continuing that process for as many beautiful years as I get to experience. And that's my joy and my passion. And that's pretty much my business roadmap and goals. Money will come. I'm very grateful that I have nice financial freedom, which I think actually is the next question. It is. I remembered. How to be financially free like you. How to be financially free like me is a very broad question. I don't know if I have financial freedom. I'm not a rich man. I think what I've done very well is I figured out how to be myself and get paid to be myself. And I figured out how to free up my week so that I get multiple days offline per week where I'm not responsible for other people or business systems. I've experimented with having employees and doing project things, and I realized that fundamentally for me, I want to have as lean a business as possible so that my true wealth can be maximized. And for me, that means time and focus. Yes, there's money, and I've got a runway of well over a year of expenses. If I didn't make any money, fantastic. I've got investments. I've got a stocks portfolio. I've got all these things, but you're not following me for stocks and shares advice. I put it in S&P 500 and I'm going to some crypto things and blah, 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 whatever. That's all secondary. The financial freedom, I know it's what I just got asked, but that's secondary to the true freedom, which is the freedom of time and energy. And for me, beyond a certain point of earning, once I've got my organic food, currently got 2 gym memberships, so I can train when I want. I can go on trips whenever I want to, but fundamentally I can buy whichever books I want to. I can keep reinvesting in the business. I'm not interested in that conspicuous spending. I'm interested in time. I'm interested in the quality of focus. For me, true wealth is I can take Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to just read books or create ideas, and then do paid things at the end of the week. I love that. That's my real freedom. So money's here. I'm very, very grateful that money comes in. As you saw from my business structure, there's a good amount of money that is coming in. Of course, tax takes away a lot of money, and I'm primarily reinvesting in both my future with savings accounts and with business expenses as well. Happily, I've got a few mentors. I've paid people. I've paid my accountant, paid a lawyer, paid some business coaches. I pay people to learn things related to the business. And I live on a very small amount of money month by month. I pay myself a very small amount and keep the rest kind of out there, not in my reach, because I don't need to reach for it, because I don't really care that much. I care about freedom of thought and freedom of energy. So that's what I optimize. And I see that we are just approaching the 1 hour mark. So hopefully this video does not corrupt. Otherwise, I will be upset. Could you shear whole your readings as a list? Is it possible? Well, my readings aren't sheep and they aren't to be sheared, and I wouldn't do it all at once. But if you're asking if I can share my whole reading list, it is technically possible, but I'm never going to do it. I'm not going to. Why would I write down a list? I really respect the question, but why would I write down a list of all 700 books I've read and then give them to somebody? Because what's actually going to happen when you've seen these reading lists, even if you. I'll give you the analogy. You've done this before. You click on a book list video. 5 seconds of the video go by. You scroll down to the comments. Someone's done all the books right there. There's 20 books. You screenshot it on your phone. It gets buried in your archive. You never look at it again. Or maybe, better case scenario, you look at it and you go, that one sounds good. There's a title. There's a title. You go to Amazon. You order that day. That's still a very small percentage of people. What is the use of me putting this a huge list of books together, every book that I've read, when my whole effort with this library has been find the best of the last 120 years, focus it down into the top 20%, and then thematically present that material, not just the top 20, but other ancillary books based on themes and issues, video by video, so that when you see a video on your homepage from Jordan Thornton, and it's how to heal depression, how to build a business, how to spiritually renew yourself, there are books in there related to the topic on the day that you're interested in, and you get just as much as you can eat on that day. You get 3 or 4 books. Sometimes I do these big book list videos, but normally I try not to recommend more than 2 to 5 books in a video, and maybe 1 or 2 of them will stick, and you'll buy it that week. That's my whole strategy. So I'm never going to publish, well, maybe I will. I don't say never. Maybe I'll get this question loads of times, and I just need to say, this is all the books, here's everything, go into my list, and this is everything I read. I don't know the usefulness of that. I'm interested in the top 104, which I'm going to teach inside my school, and I'm going to learn them back to front, and I think they're the best books that exist. 95% sure on that, best books that exist about self-integration, and I want to share them. It's not about volume, it's about quality, and it's about timing. So that's my strategy for not doing book lists. Also in the comment section, the reason that you don't see comments in the comment section is that I lovingly delete those comments because I don't want to hurt the video's reach. If someone scrolls down, they see that comment list, they don't watch the video, it goes away. 20 other people don't get recommended that video because YouTube says it's bad watch time. So literally less impact in the world, even though it seems more convenient. If you've ever left a comment of here are all the books, just think how that hurts the creator's channel. Even though it might help the viewer, it actually hurts the creator in almost every single instance. So just be wary of that. I know you mean well, and I wish I didn't have to do this, but I do for the YouTube game. So just be wary of that. Next question. What scares me? It's not spiders. It's not the dark. I'm scared. So corny. I'm scared of not reaching my potential. And that truly terrifies me. At the end of life, and hopefully only at the end of life, I have a fear of dementia and Alzheimer's. I have a fear of my brain declining, of cognitive decline. And I think that ties into the same idea. Yes, I'm afraid that I didn't live a life that was my own. Yes, I'm afraid that looking back, I wasn't authentic. But I think my week by week fear is that I'm not following the gift that I have been given, the opportunity that I've been given to do something remarkable in this life. I'm scared of not reaching my potential, not for narcissistic, self-involved, let's stack 50 million in the bank and have 10 different sports cars. And I'm not interested in that potential. I'm interested in the deeper spiritual potential of doing something meaningful and helping at the level that I think I could help in this lifetime. That drives me forwards. I'm scared of not doing that because I think it would be a great shame that all these conditions have aligned and I didn't make the best use of it. And that sometimes terrifies me to action, and I won't be afraid to admit it, that does motivate me throughout the week. I'm scared of not being who I was meant to be. And I think everyone should be a little bit scared of not being who they're meant to be, because the world is impoverished if we hide from our talents, our gifts, and our potential contribution to the people around us. That's just me. Maybe it's an extreme perspective. Next question. My question to you is, what are your thoughts on life and death? And what is our purpose as humans for our fleeting spell here on Earth? Take care, my guy. We're getting towards the end of the video, and I've left a few of these deeper ones to come in. I've timed it pretty well. We're over an hour in. I'm pretty tired physically, so I can speak, hopefully, a little bit more from the soul. What do I think happens after death? I do not know. I think the energy continues. There's something about reincarnation, something about the soul. I've experienced very beautiful, very powerful, very profound inner experiences that I would call the voice of my soul, and by extension, the voice of God. I don't know for certain what happens after death, but what I do know about life is that we are here to learn, to contribute, to love, and fundamentally this is maybe a bit more of a Christian leaning, or it could even be a karmic leaning. I don't think anything's private. I think all things are measured, and the real spiritual journey, the real self-actualization of the soul, is every single moment where you make a decision that is aligned or misaligned, ethical, unethical, good or evil, dare I say it. I think that's what it's all about. It's not the hokey cokey, which is what it's all about. Clearly a bit too tired at this point in the video. We're not doing the hokey cokey. We're not dancing around our problems. We're not bypassing towards the narratives of the great religious traditions, even though they're fantastic. I'm still going to read them. I think the real purpose of life and death is to make those choices on a day-by-day basis according to the soul's laws, according to the principles of a wider morality, a godly morality, a universal set of laws, something like this. And at the end of this life, everything will be measured and weighed up. Whether that's reincarnation, whether that's heaven and hell, I don't believe in a literal heaven and hell. I think that we exist inside heaven or hell based on our conduct. You see a man who's hooked on this and scrolling all day, he is living in hell. You see a woman who's connected with her family, connected with her mission, connected with her craft. She's living in heaven. It's quite simple when you see it that way. It's a state of consciousness that we can tap into during our waking life and during our dream states to some extent. But heaven and hell isn't just an afterlife experience. It goes much deeper than this. That's what I think it's all about. I think it's about being aware of this and living in accordance with the mystery of this whole process. I try and do that. And I also know that when I'm being a little bit sloppy, a little bit lazy in my ethics, a little bit lazy in my principles, I usually experience the hell state the day later, or even, what happens when you spend 5 hours scrolling your phone? You've entered into hell, you experienced that day. Just pay attention. That's what it's all about. We're here to love, we're here to create, we're here to connect, we're here to learn lessons. And I would go as far to say we are here to honor the gift that we've been given by God to experience this life. So much beauty. That's what I think it's about. Final question of the video. What a video it's been. Can't believe we got here. I've been swapping between the coconut water and the tea. There it is on screen. Yes, I am happy. I used to be very, very, very unhappy. I hated my life as a child, more or less I did. I hated my life as a teenager, and I struggled significantly in my early 20s. And I know what that feels like. I remember what it feels like to not want to exist. I remember what it feels like to anguish and be alienated from your body, to feel like you're a skeleton on strings. And I don't have that anymore. I have many reasons to love the inner experience and the outer experience of this day by day library building, service oriented, whatever I'm doing. And yes, the social life, and yes, my gym, and I'm going to go learn how to do a handstand push up, and I've got my muscle ups, and that's all fun, and the fun makes me happy. But the deeper happiness is that I feel like I'm myself. And I feel like I've really minimized that gap, that persona gap between who I am on the inside and who I give out to the world. And that is a joyous experience because it's a healthy inner world. My healthy inner world becomes a healthy outer expression, at least to the most part. I think that's my energy in the world. I think I give off a pretty optimistic, pretty hopeful, pretty we can do better kind of energy. And that brings me deep happiness, deep satisfaction. I really love myself. I remember that when I was working with negative self-talk, I had an experience being maybe a bit hard on myself during my teen years, early 20s. But when I committed to sobriety, when I committed to retention practices in terms of my creative energy, my erotic energy, and when I committed to mirror work practices, and this was all stacking together, I did 4 months of mirror work, sobriety. This was over 5 years ago. Mirror work, sobriety, retention, cutting out the adult distractions, looking at myself. And one day happened. One day, I remember when, sometime in the spring, around my birthday, when that inner critic just turned off. And I don't say mean words to myself. I don't hate on myself. I don't cause unhappiness, at least at the linguistic level, anymore. There's still other experiences that come up from time to time. Moods come up, but there's generally a happy baseline, because why wouldn't I be happy? The inner narrative, the inner experience is rooted in something healthy. And yeah, how's my purpose and where's it headed? The second half of the question, well, that's not for me to know all the way. I have a pretty strong vision that I want to be teaching and writing well into my 90s. I'm planning to get there if I can, but fundamentally, it's not for me to decide. I'm happy with where I'm at, I'm happy with the journey that's ahead, and I'm happy to be sharing these conversations with you. So I think that's as much as I can celebrate this 5-year anniversary. And I'll see you maybe at the 6-year anniversary.